Hello everybody, welcome to Snyder's Inc. And today we got top 5 unknown, and this is the 5 dark mystery cases that'll creep you out. We're gonna get right into it, ladies and gentlemen. The like button, subscribe button, comment your thing down below. Let's go.
These missing person cases have haunted those involved for years and, in some cases, decades. Although time has passed since these individuals mysteriously disappeared, their names and stories have not been forgotten. Number 5. When he was just 3 years old, Waa Jr. moved from Germany to an island in Hawaii with his family. York grew up in Hawaii. He graduated from Castle High School and briefly attended Hawaii Pacific University to study his native language of German. He mostly worked as a carpenter and in his spare time enjoyed fishing. York did not drink alcohol or visit bars, but he did engage in at least one substance-related vice, marijuana. At the time of his disappearance in 2003, York was involved in an indoor grow operation in Oahu, in the neighborhood of Manoa, Honolulu. York and his father, York Sr., had allegedly been in the business for years, since at least 1999, when York first became involved with the man who would ultimately be responsible for his disappearance, Gregory Awana. A former deputy sheriff, Gregory was involved in growing marijuana himself, and had been approached by York to help in a grow operation in a rented house in Manoa. According to court documents, Gregory knew the owner of the home, and he thought he could cut York and his father from the operation. In 1999, Gregory told York that he'd lost the rental contract for the home and couldn't use it for the drug operation. But this was not actually true. In fact, Gregory thought that York Jr. and Sr. were untrustworthy and had decided to use the home to start a growing operation with supplies from Maui. For approximately 4 years, Gregory used the home in Manoa to grow marijuana without York's knowledge. He occasionally sold the drugs to York, but told him he had obtained it directly from Maui. In August of 2003, York drove by the Manoa home and realized that Gregory had been continuing to use it as a grow site behind his back. He reportedly was angry and believed that Gregory owed him a portion of the profits, since he had loaned the money and equipment to Gregory to set up an operation at the home. But Gregory believed that he didn't owe anything to York, who he felt he'd cut out of this operation years prior. Gregory and York agreed to meet on August 28, 2003. York asked a few associates to watch his back, and the pair agreed to the meeting from a distance. Gregory, meanwhile, brought his wife Jody as backup. At around 5 p.m., Gregory got into York's car, and the pair drove together to the Manoa house. Gregory had a backpack with him, which contained a 9mm handgun. At around 5:15, Gregory and York entered the home together. York's associate called him at about 5:30 p.m. to check on him, and York answered his phone and confirmed he was fine. But he did say that Gregory had a gun. York and Gregory continued meeting for several hours that evening. York spoke on the phone with his associate twice more, at 6:45 and 7:30 p.m. Both times he seemed calm and said that he would meet up with the group later that evening. But after a third and final phone call, York stopped communicating. He didn't answer his phone, and he was never heard from again. At 9 p.m. that night, his car was found on a residential street after it had been set on fire. Police moved.
Oh yeah, this would be an easy case to figure out. Look, you went to go meet him. You went to go meet this guy who's related to your drug business, and suddenly he goes vanish and his car's on fire. Yeah, I think I know who the guy is.
Quickly in investigating York's missing person case. By August 31st, a team of officers were set up to conduct surveillance on the Manoa house. At 12:30 p.m., Gregory and his wife Jody were observed carrying several boxes and trash bags out of the house, which they then loaded into a pickup truck and dumped. The boxes and bags were found to contain marijuana plants, towels, and cinder blocks that appeared to have bodily fluids on them. Based on this evidence, police arrested Gregory that same afternoon. Gregory quickly confessed to police that he and York had gotten into an altercation. He said that he'd shot the other man in self-defense and had dumped his body on August 29th. But what makes this an unsolved missing person case is the curious fact that York was never located. According to a legal opinion published by the Hawaii Court of Appeals, Gregory confessed to weighing down York's body after dumping him in a bay, which may have contributed to him being missing. But despite the lack of physical proof, Gregory was found guilty of second-degree murder in December of 2004.
I mean, he admitted to killing him. And if it was self-defense, you wouldn't have buried the body to the point it can't be found.
A jury rejected his claims of self-defense. In certain legal circles, York's tragic case is well known as a no-body homicide, an unusual case where an attacker is prosecuted despite a lack of evidence that a person has been killed. One case study found fewer than 500 such examples across the US. Nearly 20 years after the fact, York has not been located. Although his fate is presumed, he still is technically a missing person. Number 4. Born in 1932, June...
Well, I mean, we could safely assume he's dead, right? I mean, the guy even said he shot him in self-defense, and the guy wouldn't lie about shooting someone if he didn't actually shoot him. While he shot him in self-defense, and that's a different story. He claimed to have shot him and killed him. Alright? So he's dead. Just figuring out where the hell he is.
Allison Streer lived a groundbreaking life. She was a talented singer and performer, and traveled the country's various clubs and cabarets in the mid-20th century. June married 5 times and had 2 children. She met her 5th husband, Lawrence Streer, when he was performing at a carnival. After they were married, Lawrence and June began a husband and wife act. As a country music duo, they lived on the road, singing at venues across the United States. But after 4 years of this life, June was tired of traveling. She told her sisters she wanted to settle down, but Lawrence wasn't ready to give up performing. Troublingly, June also said that she was afraid of her husband. Although she tried to leave several times, she always seemed to wind back up in Lawrence's arms. June allegedly said Lawrence had threatened her life more than once. On October 8, 1973, June, Lawrence, her 2 children, and their dogs were traveling from Lawrence's family home in Florida to Penn Yan, New York. Lawrence was driving, and they were towing a small trailer behind them. Eventually, the Streeters pulled over at a rest stop on Highway 431. They'd made it about 225 miles north from Lawrence's parents' home, but they had over 900 to go to reach Penn Yan. Some sources report that the couple were allegedly arguing. In fact, a noise complaint was called in at the rest area, but Alabama state troopers drove by and saw the vehicle and trailer, but didn't hear any commotion. They kept going without stopping to talk to Lawrence or June. That night, June's 2 children slept in the backseat of the car.
That is the dumbest police I've ever heard. That is the dumbest thing I've ever... Why would... Police, if there was a noise complaint and there's loud argument between a couple, maybe this is why this part of the 70s, the cops were way more lazy. They drove by like, oh, I don't hear anyone screaming in pain. Guess it must be alright. Can't go up on our merry way. Like, fuck you doing?
Car, while June, Lawrence, and the dogs slept in the trailer. The next morning, Lawrence awoke the 2 children and told them that their mother had left in the middle of the night. The kids could hear the dogs barking in the trailer, but Lawrence wouldn't let them inside. He told them that since June was gone, they would have to return to their father's home in Bath, New York. Without allowing the children inside the trailer to get their belongings, Lawrence drove them to the nearby town of LaGrange.
Yeah, there's some sketchy. If I was one of them kids, oh, that'd be sketchy to me. Once I would hear that, and they'd be like, oh, no, can we go and try to get... No, you can't go and try to get things. Even my brain would be like, okay. Like, my brain would be a bit suspicious. And then when they drop me off some random person's house, if they don't know, like, if it's just someone that we both think, I'd be like, listen, there's something up there. You need to call police to get them to go in that trailer. There's something up there.
Georgia, and put them directly onto a 2-day bus to New York. One of the children didn't even have shoes on, and both were ill-dressed for the cooler northern weather. Lawrence had unhooked the trailer from the car to drive the children to the bus stop. At some point after dropping them off, He returned to Alabama, where he registered the trailer under a false address. Then he went home to Florida. He didn't report his wife missing. June's children never saw her again. After several months, June's family eventually reported her missing to the police department in Penn Yan, New York. Investigators worked with authorities in Alabama, Florida, and Georgia, but were unable to find any trace of June. They also spoke to Lawrence, who reiterated his story that June had left in the middle of the night. A search of the trailer turned up some of June's clothing and other belongings, as well as a .32 caliber pistol, but no physical evidence was found. In 1974, Lawrence...
Yeah, it's gonna took them months to report them missing. Listen, if the children told me, oh, mommy apparently left in the middle of the night, it would not be a few months before I'd report her missing, not be long before I'd report her missing.
Submitted to a lie detector test, which he failed. He was arrested for failing to return June's belongings to her family, but the case was eventually settled out of court. No further charges against Lawrence were ever levied, and he passed away in 2021 without ever revealing additional evidence. He was the only known person of interest in this nearly 40-year-old case. June's children have submitted DNA to be kept on file in case her remains are found. Her family believes Lawrence took her life and she's buried somewhere along Highway 431.
Agreed?
The missing person case is still active, and anyone with information is asked to call the Penn Yan Police Department at 315-536-4426. Number 3. Kathleen Haley lived alone in Newport News, Virginia, with just her dog Molly for company. She was a very private individual whose family has said that she rarely shared details about herself with anyone. The 5'10", 37-year-old woman with striking dark hair and dark eyes worked as a dancer at a local club, but the exact location of the club was unknown, even to Kathleen's family. She preferred not to tell them the name. They knew that she worked late hours, sometimes not getting home until 3 a.m. Although Kathleen was solitary and private, she checked in regularly with her mother and her sister, who she usually spoke to on the phone once or twice a week. Kathleen was last heard from on September 1st, 2012. She talked on the phone with her sister Diane and made tentative plans to come over sometime, although she told Diane that she was busy that evening. After that, none of Kathleen's family members heard from her again. Concerned, Kathleen's mother reported her missing on September 7th, 2012. And when police went to her apartment, they found an extremely frightening scene that seemed to spell trouble for the missing woman. Kathleen's home on the 2800 block of West Avenue had been ransacked. Her computer was missing, as was her dog, Molly. Kathleen's entire bed was also gone, and a section of carpet in the bedroom had been cut away and was missing. Elsewhere in the home, police discovered a mattress with brown staining on it. They also found stained clothing in a laundry basket and bodily fluids splashed on the bedroom wall. In the bathroom, investigators found cleaning supplies and several pairs of rubber gloves. Finally, Kathleen's car was still parked out front, but all of its doors were unlocked. In addition, the driver's seat was pushed all the way back, which may have indicated someone taller than Kathleen had been driving. Police quickly came to suspect foul play. They also had a suspect, an unidentified man who had been seen in the area earlier that week. The man, who witnesses described as white with blonde hair, was seen coming and going from Kathleen's apartment on September 4th. Notably, he used a key, which surprised Kathleen's family when they heard about it. They didn't think the notoriously private woman would let anyone have such access to her home. The man was reportedly seen walking from Kathleen's apartment to the nearby dumpsters with rolled up fabric in his arms, which may have been bedding. Although a composite has been created and distributed, the man has never been identified. To this day, Kathleen's case remains unsolved, with the unknown man being the primary suspect in her shocking disappearance. Anyone with information about Kathleen or the person of interest should contact the Newport News Police Department at 757-247-2500. Informants may also anonymously call the local crime line at 1-888-562-5887. Number 2. On Sunday, August 7, 1983, retired professor John E. Warren went out for a walk on the New Jersey campus of Ocean County College. John, aged 69, lived about a mile away in nearby Toms River and planned to cut through the woods separating his home from the campus. It was 9 a.m. and the day had not yet grown too hot. John was in a regular habit of walking a 4-mile stretch through the woods and across the college campus. But his wife of nearly 50 years, Estelle, often nagged her husband to take a car to the campus instead of shortcutting through the woods. On the morning of August 7th, John called down to Estelle from the top of the basement stairs while she was doing laundry. She called back up that he should take the car, but he declined. He headed out to walk the dirt path. At around 9:15 a.m., a security guard saw John on College Drive on the campus. The 5'10" gray-haired man cut a familiar figure in his white sports shirt and blue jogging shoes. In addition to just having retired from the college 2 months prior, John was a regular walker in the area and had been a runner in previous years. Just 2 years prior, in 1981, he'd been diagnosed with arthritis in his hip, which forced him to curtail his 20-year jogging habit. But he was still in excellent shape. Estelle described him as a very athletic person, and his refusal to cut back on taking the dirt path through the woods certainly seems to back up that fact. At about 9:50 on August 7th, John stopped to chat with a jogger, a local man named Mark Hazer. Mark told investigators that he spoke to an older man matching John's physical description, who asked him how far he ran and wished he could run like that. This sighting would be the last time John was ever seen. Before his untimely disappearance, John was a well-respected professor and researcher. He taught engineering at Ocean County College for some time. But in the 1960s and prior, he'd been a senior engineer and consultant for the US government, specializing in rocket science and development. According to an article published about John in 2015, his resume highlighted as some of his accomplishments a fueling system for use on helicopters, analog computers for flight control simulations, and engine controls and instruments for aircraft. A former student recalled that John was quick to tell us stories of his days with RCA and some military research projects that he worked on in the 40s. After he went missing, some of those who knew John theorized that his work on missile guidance systems may have been related to his disappearance, but investigators found no evidence to support this theory. In the 2015 article published about John's life, one of his former students wrote that he still passes by the college regularly, and he thinks about the professor of engineering who changed his life. The student, a man named Bob Schwindel, wrote that both he and John were audiophiles, and that together they developed a pair of speakers that still function to this day. At John's retirement dinner, Bob and other students pitched in and bought him a bottle of scotch, as well as a plaque which they made using a circuit board etching technique. Bob also recalled calling John about a week before he disappeared to tell him that he landed a post-college job using his degree in engineering. It's clear that John was an excellent educator who touched the lives of many. It also seems that he didn't have any enemies or anyone who would want him to disappear, despite his track record of government work. But police do believe that John disappeared under mysterious circumstances. In addition to being a generally athletic person who was unlikely to be tripped up by a walk that he regularly undertook, John was known to be punctual, and his wife Estelle stated that he would always call her if he thought he was going to be late. At about 10 a.m., she became concerned and retraced John's steps through the woods. On the dirt path, she saw two sets of footprints from his shoes, one that led toward the college and the other that set back towards their home. By 11 a.m., Estelle grew concerned enough to call the police. The handwritten report, which is timestamped 12/23, notes that John's mental condition was thought to be normal, and that his wife said John had been wearing a white t-shirt, blue shorts, and blue sneakers. By the time the report was filed, the college security guard's sighting of John at 9:15 had been reported. By 2:30 p.m., Toms River Police had organized a search party, including a sheriff's department bloodhound, which used some of John's belongings to follow a scent through the woods about a mile away. Security staff from the college, as well as volunteer fire brush trucks, were also deputized to check paths, roads, and buildings for John. According to the police report, 3 military helicopters were diverted from a nearby mission and canvassed the campus and surrounding areas for approximately 30 minutes with no result. In total, 35 volunteers, in addition to local police, assisted in a ground and air search for more than 6 hours, but the search was temporarily halted after night fell. Every day for the next 5 days, the search party returned to the local woods, but no trace of John could be found. Police put out a missing person bulletin, and in the coming months, the local township police detective cross-checked John's information against a number of bodies in the area, and none were a match. The last concrete lead in John's case was recorded on September 24th, 1983. Estelle called the police to her residence to tell them that she had found a shoe in the woods, which she believed might be related to the case, but the shoe did not belong to John. Police took the item into evidence at the precinct, but didn't make any further notes about the finding. John's missing person case was covered in local newspapers sporadically in the years following his disappearance, including a short profile in 2007 and a longer feature in 2015. If still alive today, John would be 109 years old. His 110th birthday would be November 16, 2023. Reports have not indicated whether Estelle is still alive or if the couple has any children or relatives who are still searching for him. But at the very least, some of John's students are still out there thinking of him, and they can...
There is no way he is still alive. There is no way. He is 100% deceased. Just, I wonder if he's dead in the woods or did he just end up having died somewhere else.
Continue to hope for closure in this tragic case, some 40 years later. John's case remains under investigation with the Toms River Police Department. Anyone with information may contact 732-349-0150. Number 1. Bright and vibrant Melanie Flynn was a well-connected resident of Lexington, Kentucky in the tumultuous 1970s. Born in 1952, Melanie grew up in a nuclear family with 2 loving parents and 2 brothers. Melanie's father, Bobby Flynn, was born in Lexington and attended the local Lafayette High School. He attended the University of Dayton on a basketball scholarship before enlisting in the U.S. Army and Merchant Marines. As a young man, Bobby played professional baseball for the Brooklyn Dodgers before returning home to start a family with his wife, Ella Ritchie Crow Flynn, a fellow Lafayette High School graduate. Ella and Bobby had 3 children, Doug, Brad, and Melanie. They raised their family in Lexington and instilled in their children a love of good sportsmanship. As an adult, Doug played for the Cincinnati Reds, and Ella in particular was a devoted fan. Melanie, too, spent some time in Cincinnati in support of her brother. As for her love of sports, Melanie was a passionate horseback rider who dreamed of being a jockey. In 1968, the Flynn family rose to further local prominence when Bobby was elected as a Kentucky state senator. He served just 1 term before returning to his job as an insurance salesman, but he continued to dabble in local politics, including a 12-year stint on the Lexington City Council. In 1972, the same year Bobby's Senate term ended, tragedy struck the Flynn family when Melanie fell off of a running horse and suffered a serious head injury. She was hospitalized for months and developed neurological deficits, including the loss of her sense of smell and taste. This affliction would plague Melanie for the rest of her life. Sometime in the 1970s, Melanie also divorced her husband, whose name has generally not been published in online records. It's clear that despite a seemingly idyllic childhood, her young adulthood was troubled. Some reports allege that Melanie began abusing drugs and alcohol in the years following her accident. She also reportedly was under the care of a psychiatrist and may have been taking mental health medication. In 1977, 24-year-old Melanie was working as a secretary for the Kentucky High School Athletic Association in Lexington. She appeared to have considered the job just a stopping point in her greater life's trajectory. In addition to her aspiration to be a jockey, Melanie was also interested in singing and had been thinking about a career in the performing arts. She even had a stage name picked out, Melanie O'Hara. On a cold January afternoon, Melanie was sitting at her desk, maybe daydreaming about her future, when her phone rang. It was her father, Bobby. He asked her to bring some materials home from work for him to review. Melanie promised she would, but told him that she first had to go to a 5:30 p.m. doctor's appointment. In addition to psychiatric care, Melanie also took prescription antihistamines for allergies. It's possible that her doctor's appointment may have been related to this. At 5 p.m. on January 25, 1977, Melanie left work in her 1975 Ford Elite. She drove down Cooper Drive and took a right turn onto South Limestone Street. She didn't arrive at her doctor's appointment, and her family never heard from her again. Bobby reported his daughter missing 3 days later to police detective Bill Kanan. Initially, he was concerned that Melanie might have developed amnesia related to her 1972 head injury. But a witness reported that they had seen Melanie at a local restaurant called Nellie Kelly's, talking to a man with a pockmarked face and brown hair parted in the middle. Another witness had seen her not far from the intersection of Cooper Drive and South Limestone Street, talking to a person in a blue van. Melanie had only about $12 in cash with her when she went missing. She was supposed to get paid on January 28th, but she never picked up her check. Her belongings were left untouched in her bedroom at home. 11 days after she vanished, Melanie's red car was found abandoned in semi-suspicious circumstances. On February 8th, local police discovered it parked at an apartment complex on Hollow Creek Road. Melanie's red jacket was inside the car, and so was her suitcase, left over from a trip she'd taken the previous week. Her purse and car keys were missing. The building at which Melanie's car was found was a known drug hotspot in Lexington. It's unclear if Melanie's parents, Bobby and Ella, knew that she was involved in drug culture. But Lexington area police were aware of both the Hollow Creek Road building and Melanie. In fact, some months prior, they had pressed Melanie into service as an undercover informant. She'd reportedly agreed in order to avoid her own arrest for possession of marijuana. As part of her work for the police, Melanie was required to bring a detective to members of the drug culture in Lexington, introducing the man as her boyfriend. That detective was none other than Bill Kanan, a friend of the Flynn family, and the very same investigator to whom Bobby had reported his daughter missing. Melanie reportedly claimed that she and Bill did not have a personal relationship outside of her undercover work, but both Bobby and Ella came to believe that Bill was involved with their daughter. In August of 1977, Melanie's purse was found floating in the Kentucky River, about 20 miles south. The Flynns came to suspect foul play. Meanwhile, police were following up on several unusual leads that seemed to indicate Melanie might be in Florida. These included several witnesses at the Texas Hotel in Daytona Beach, who claimed to have seen a woman matching a photo of Melanie between March and June of 1977. Some of the witnesses even reported speaking to the woman, who was noted to have mentioned getting medical treatment for an allergy. The woman was also said to have similar mannerisms to Melanie Flynn, but she was never located, and ultimately the Florida sightings faded into history as unconfirmed. As time went on, Bobby and Ella Flynn grew more and more suspicious of the Lexington Police Department. In 1985, an FBI bust of a rogue narcotics officer named Andrew Thornton infamously ended in the suspect parachuting out of a plane with a duffel bag full of more than 70 pounds of cocaine. Thornton did not survive the jump, and he was found with a massive collection of drugs, cash, and guns. His passing exposed a massive drug ring operating within the Lexington PD for decades, an operation called the Company. Andrew Thornton joined the Lexington Police Department in 1968, where he volunteered for the brand new narcotics squad. Along with another officer, Henry Vance, Andrew became the department's premier undercover squad member. Andrew and Henry were both well-connected Kentucky blue bloods from wealthy families, and they became fast friends. Andrew ran the undercover operations while Henry acted as a unit spokesman. Those who knew Andrew described him as a Starsky and Hutch type of cop. According to the Washington Post, he drove fast cars, popped in and raided people. After just a few years, the duo reportedly became drug dealers themselves, sourcing their stash from police evidence lockers. In 1977, Andrew left the force and became a lawyer. Henry left as well, but the duo continued their illegal activities, and their syndicate eventually grew to involve more than 300 people who trafficked in drugs and guns. In 1977, Andrew, Henry, and another Lexington blue blood from their social circle named Bradley Bryant formed a private security company called Executive Protection Limited. The security company was allegedly little more than a front for the trio's growing trafficking business. But by 1981, Bradley had been arrested, and legitimate law enforcement was narrowing in. The full extent of the trafficking ring, though, was not completely revealed until Thornton's death in 1985. The repercussions of the bust were massive. The entire thing was chronicled in a 1989 book called The Bluegrass Conspiracy, and it was this name which reports have used when they described the scheme, which Melanie Flynn may have been an unwilling part of. By 1993, Bill Kanan, the detective who Melanie was working with, was charged on a federal drug offense. He was sentenced to 18 years in prison and eventually passed away in 2020. Although sources do not confirm that he was linked to the conspiracy, Melanie's parents believed that Bill was a part of the trafficking ring, known as the Company. Bobby and Ella Flynn believed that there was a police cover-up in their daughter's case, and that evidence had been hidden. They stated that Bill Kanan had abducted Melanie and taken her life as part of this cover-up, but these claims have never been validated. Melanie's tragic case was most recently in the news in 2019, when an unnamed source led authorities to a property along the Kentucky River, where Melanie's body had reportedly been dumped. The person instructed officers to search for an underground septic tank in the Murphy's Landing area. The source was described as someone who wanted to get this information off their chest, but no further information was published, implying that Melanie's remains were not located. Her missing person case remains open to this day. If found, Melanie would be 71 years old this year. Tragically, her parents passed away just months apart in 2022. But Melanie's siblings still think of her regularly, and her younger brother Brad told reporters that he's glad Melanie has not been forgotten. Melanie's case continues to be investigated by the Lexington Fayette Police Department. Anyone with information can call 859-258-3600 and reference agency case number 0131-77048. The department can also be reached at 859-258-3563. Thank you guys so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is it for this reaction video. Let me know what you think in the comments. Hit the like button and subscribe button. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you all for the next one.